So, good afternoon, students of economics. Welcome to today's session. So, in today's session, I should be discussing features of developing countries. So, you can understand the features by studying this comparative table. So, on the left hand side, I have marked it as developing. On the right hand side, I have marked it as developed. So, what are the features of developing and developed countries? So, the first feature of developing country is that per capita income is indicated, and here the per capita income is always low, whereas in case of developed countries the per capita income is very high. So in developing countries, when per capita income is low, it automatically means the standard of living is also low, whereas in developed countries, because of high per capita income, the standard of living is very high. And third point is that there is widespread poverty in developing countries, whereas poverty is there existing in developed countries, but it is very less. So the incidence of poverty is very low in developed countries. Then number 4, income inequality is very high in developing countries, whereas even in developed countries income inequality is there, but it is very narrow. It is very narrow. Then developing countries, they primarily depend on agriculture. While the developed countries they depend on industrial and service sector. Then developing countries is characterized by high population, whereas developed countries is characterized by low population. And then national income contribution comes majorly from agriculture in developing countries, whereas national income contribution comes majorly from industrial and service sector. Okay, I hope children this 7 point which I had discussed is very clear. Now the eighth point is there is high degree of unemployment in developing countries, whereas in developed countries level of unemployment is very low, and rate of savings and capital formation is very less in developing countries, whereas rate of savings and capital formation is very high in developed countries. Then there is lack of infrastructure. There is lack of infrastructure in developing countries, and in case of developed countries, infrastructure is very good. Then coming to the 11th point, developing countries always use old techniques in production, whereas developed countries use the latest and the modern updated techniques. Then number 12, poor human capital is another characteristic feature of developing countries, whereas in developed countries the quality of human capital is a bit on the higher side. Then developing countries depend majorly on agricultural export, whereas developing countries depend on agricultural export, whereas developed countries they depend on industrial and service industrial export. They depend on industrial export. So these are the 13 very crystal clear features of developing and developed countries. This is a very important part in this topic. So please be thorough with these 13 points. Now I am coming to the second part of the topic, that is I am going to deal with type of economies. Before understanding the types of economies, we should understand what is an economic system. Economic system is defined as the sum total of all devices and institutions. That is all productive forces and the institutions through which economical choices take place, and economical choices take place because resources are scarce. And so with this available scarce resource, economic choices are efficiently made, thereby satisfying the human wants, or in other words satisfying the consumer's wants. Okay, now having understood what is an economic system, now we should study the types of economic systems. So one is called the capitalistic economy or capitalism, socialistic economy or socialism. Then we have mixed economies where private and public sector both go hand in hand. Okay, now let us understand what is capitalism. See, what are the how do you identify an economy, whether it is capitalistic, socialistic, or a mixed economy? So if you want to understand capitalistic economy, then we find that it is bound by all these features. First is that resources are used by the private owners. Resources like land, labor, capital, everything is used by the private owners. Nothing is in the hands of the government. Everything is in the hands of the private owners. And these private owners, they are profit and their motive is to earn profit. Their motive is to earn profit. And more important point is that the government does not interfere. The government does not interfere. I don't mean to say that government does not totally interfere. If involvement of the private owners is 95%, there is 5% of involvement or interference by the government. Okay, these are the points. Then there is no planning regarding economic activities. Since because everything is in the hands of the private owners, they plan according to the situation. They plan according to their choices. So there is no proper planning regarding economic activities. Countries like US, UK, France, Japan, Australia, and some Western countries, they follow capitalistic mode of functioning. Okay. What are the features of capitalism? So the first feature is that the resources are privately owned. Land, labor, capital, factories, mines, everything is owned by the private owners. They got the right to buy or sell the productive forces. And what to produce, how to produce, how much to invest, everything is decided by the private owners, and there is no interference by the government. Of course, there is some exceptional case. In case of railways, dams and roads, the government has the control over it and not the private owners. Okay. Now I am coming to the second point, right of inheritance. This is a very interesting point in capitalistic economy. Right of inheritance means, suppose if I am the business owner, I am a capitalist, I have the right to transfer my business to my legal heir, and therefore I have the initiative to amass wealth. And this is a very good incentive for the private owners. Then freedom of enterprise and occupation. Everyone is free to use their productive resources in the way they like, and furthermore, anybody has a right to choose any kind of profession according to their capability and according to their skills. Okay. Now I am coming to the fourth point, freedom of choice for consumers. Now this is a very vital point here. Consumers consume product of their choice. So here the consumers, they consume product of their choice, and they have the right to spend their money. They can decide on what product to spend their money, how much to spend their money, where not to spend their money. So it is their choice. Therefore, in a market, quantity of goods produced is very much equal to the preference of the consumer. In other words, it is the consumer preference that enables the market to decide what kind of goods to be produced. Or in other words, quantity of goods produced in a market depends on the preference of the consumer. So till here I close my session. Tomorrow I shall continue with